Well, I'm finally ready to call the Minnesota Vikings a capital G good team. And counterintuitively, this isn't coming after they stormed out to a 5-0 record. Instead, I feel the most confident about them after they suffered their first defeat to the Detroit Lions. The biggest reason for my hesitation had been how ineffective the teams looked in the second halves of their previous two games against the Packers and Jets. Combined, the Vikings scored 45 points and gained 381 yards in the first two quarters, versus just 9 and 279 in the latter two. There was that stat going around that Darnold had attempted just one pass when trailing, and I worried that his and this team's success might be a mirage. Do they just get out to early leads and hang on for dear life? I thought that maybe they didn't have it in them to play from behind or in more hotly contested games. But now, after getting down by 2 scores and rallying back in Week 7 against one of the league's Super Bowl favorites, there's no denying that they have the ability to hang tough for all 4 quarters. So, I've always had a soft spot for Sam Darnold. One of my very first videos on this channel was about him, and I've been a card-carrying member of the Darnold subreddit for several months now. Darnold was brought in to be a bridge quarterback for JJ McCarthy. He still is that in Minnesota, but I think he's a bridge that extends far further than they initially thought. He might actually get them all the way from regular season city to playoffsville. Through 6 games, he's gone 109 for 164 for 1,370 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 picks, and a 104 passer rating. He isn't the MVP candidate he was memed into being 3 weeks into the season. Instead, he's been the fuel for the 2 real engines of this offense, Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones, both of whom are playing like top 10, if not top 5 players at their positions this year. Darnold has played the role of aggressive game manager. He drives the ball into intermediate areas with anticipation, uses his mobility in sticky situations, and occasionally unleashes a bomb downfield. If there's one thing about Darnold, it's that he trusts his guys to make a play. On balls thrown 20 plus yards downfield, Darnold ranks 3rd in adjusted completion percentage, and his general average depth of target is 3rd highest in the league at 9.7. This isn't a guy who's just dinking and dunking his way to the opponent's red zone. Here's a deep touchdown throw that came on the Vikings' first drive of the second half. The Lions come out with a single high safety and defenders lined up over Minnesota's skill players. Keep an eye on what happens on the left side of the formation between Jefferson and the ex-receiver Jordan Addison. The Vikings use a little motion from Addison to get a man or zone tell. When the DB follows the X inside, Darnold can assume he's getting man coverage and probably knows immediately that this ball is going to Jefferson pretty much no matter what. Darnold throws this ball right as Addison is making his break to catch the safety flat-footed and threads it through where only JJ can grab it. Before the touchdown, Minnesota was down 21-10 at half. There was a very real feeling, for me at least, that the Vikings offense would celebrate Halloween early and lay down to die in the third quarter. But they actually did the opposite. They made plays, and Darnold was a catalyst for a lot of this. Like this 51-yard bomb that Darnold connects on with Addison, finding the seam in the Lions' cover 3 coverage. This came with 10 minutes left in the fourth, the Vikings on their own 9 and down 28-20. While they could only get a field goal out of this drive, it can't be overstated how important the flipping of the field can be against a high-powered offense late in a game. And then, if you followed me for a little bit, you know how much I love the honey hole throws, passes that land in between the corner and safety outside the numbers, and Darnold had maybe his best throw of the day late in the third quarter in this situation. He drops this ball right over the top of the jumping defender, in front of the other crashing down, and into Jalen Nailor's hands for a nice 33-yard gain. Darnold can make all the throws, and when he's playing with confidence, it can be a real thing of beauty. But our golden boy and the subject of my favorite subreddit wasn't perfect by any means. He had a couple blunders that affected the result of this game, the biggest one being the interception he threw late in the second quarter while in Lions territory. Coming off play action, he wants Addison, who is cutting across the field. On Darnold's dropback, the play appears to be developing how he wants. The linebacker is crashing down toward the line, and the weak side safety takes Jefferson in the opposite direction away from his target. Only, he never clocks Brian Branch, who almost hides behind the rest of the play before launching himself in front of Darnold's pass. Detroit would turn this interception into a touchdown and give Minnesota only 30 seconds to respond before halftime, which they didn't. This turnover was ultimately a 7 to 14 point swing, depending on what the Vikings would have done had they not turned it over here. It's a moment that's especially damning in a game they lost by 2 points. But Minnesota still had a chance to win. With 2:43 left to go in the fourth, the Vikings have a 3rd and 4. Convert, and they can melt away the clock and likely come away with a win. Minnesota runs a rollout pass to target Jefferson on the outside. It's a difficult pass to make with the traffic. Addison runs to the same area of the field, and I do wonder if there was a miscommunication here because Darnold has to throw it over him but still get it to JJ. He throws it too high with too much power, and it goes just out of reach. The Lions get the ball and are able to drive into Vikings territory and kick the game-winning field goal. Darnold's couple mistakes in this game shrunk the margin of error for Minnesota. Against a middling or even above average team, I think the Vikings did enough to win. But it's a higher level of consistency that separates the great teams from the good ones and often determines wins and losses. Brian Flores' defense will open a window of opportunity to win every game for the Vikings, and it will be up to this offense to open that window even further, or just keep it from completely shutting like they did against Green Bay and New York. And I can already see the comments coming in now. LMAO, you're glazing the Vikes defense after they had their worst game, crying laughing face, skull emoji, skull emoji, skull emoji. But look, even afterwards, they still rank as the #1 rated defense by EPA. And I think they actually did a fairly nice job against the Lions, most notably in trying to disrupt the mayor of Detroit, Jared Goff. For the past few years, the story on Goff has been that he turns into a pumpkin if you can heat him up. This seemed to be Minnesota's strategy. Get in his face to make him uncomfortable, then play mind games with their unique fronts and coverages to turn that discomfort into confusion. According to PFF, the Vikings pressured Goff on 58.6% of his dropbacks, a much higher clip than the typical 35.4% rate he experiences. The thing is, he just performed way better in these opportunities than he normally does, a 67.6 grade compared to a 51.1 on the whole year. At his usual numbers, he ranks 18th under pressure, but if he was doing what he was doing against the Vikings, he'd rank 4th. Minnesota got to him constantly, even got a strip sack at one point, but it never seemed to lead to the results they ultimately wanted. He torched them and recovered his fumble. No doubt though, the Lions did put some good stuff on tape for how to beat this Flores defense. One of the biggest things that stood out to me was how they motioned and used wide receivers in pass protection or run blocking. Commentator Greg Olson also shouted out this instance in the second quarter, where the Lions motioned Tim Patrick over to help block Andrew Van Ginkel and give Goff the time to throw a 35-yard touchdown. Later, in the same quarter, they used something similar to chip Van Ginkel and open up space for Jahmyr Gibbs in the run game. I expect we'll start to see more teams running this type of wrinkle against Minnesota. But even against some clever scheming, the Vikings defense still made their presence known. With about 6 minutes left to go in the fourth, Ivan Pace forced a fumble on Gibbs and recovered it for a 36-yard touchdown run. Moments like this can reverse a mistake like Darnold's first half reception. That window of opportunity that had been shutting is magically reopened. After this past week, I think the Vikings are absolutely for real. Maybe they don't ascend to the level of contender status due to the trust level at the quarterback position, but they've fit themselves squarely into the playoff race as a team nobody wants to face. And I know I'm not really going off on a limb here by saying a 5-1 team should get into the playoffs, but in what is a really good NFC North, and for a team that many predicted to win 6 to 7 games, I think it's a real accomplishment that they've made that take as cold as it sounds right now. The Vikings are one of the best stories and most fun teams to watch in the NFL this year, and if there's anything this video convinces you of, is that they're worth your time to watch every Sunday. Well, that, and you should absolutely join the Darnold subreddit if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to give it a like if you did enjoy it and consider subscribing to the channel so you can catch the next one. And if you want to check out my deeper analysis of the Vikings defense or watch the very first video on this channel about Sam Darnold, click on one of these links now. Thanks, bye.